Good evening, everyone. Long time no post video for me, and I apologize for that, but just wanted to give you an update as to where I am with the current state of the layout. It looks kind of a mess right now, but it's an organized mess. I'll walk you around and show you what I've done since the last update. And there may be what I may do is put a couple of still photos of some of the reconstruction of the peninsula and so forth at the end of this, so you can kind of get an idea of how that progressed along. Currently I have all of the layout back together. I have both main lines reassembled, if you will, the whole way around the layout, with the exception of the bridge back over here. So you can see the garage has kind of become a mess. I've had some more remodeling projects going on, so anyway, the reason for the clutter over here is because of that. But looking down the back straightaway, I'll call it, underneath the circuit breaker boxes over there, you can see I've got a small train sitting there. That's because I've been testing each section as I've reconnected and relayed track, just to make sure it works properly. I have relayed all of the outside loops, if you will, the outside turns on the layout. So back down here, and I'll walk down this direction so you can take a look. This section where the two main lines turn around and come into the peninsula, all of that is new track around from where this Sioux locomotive is right here, the whole way around to the other side where it becomes a straight section again. So that's all new flex track in there. I've also laid new flex track on these three curves here. All of these are super elevated with masking tape. I think I did a video a long time ago, maybe a couple of layouts ago, on how that's done. Can't remember if it was on this layout or the one before, but just putting masking tape down and then to super elevate the curves. So those three are relayed up to the point where the, I'll call it, original track was in the layout. You know, it's reconnected there. Back over here where the yard used to be is all connected now with new track up to this point here in the layout. This outside main, which is close to the edge of the table, that's probably 50% new track down there to the other end. And I've relayed the curves where you see those Walther's kits sitting. There were some areas in the curves that I wasn't happy with. Some of the curves had some kinks in them. I'm not sure if that was due to the way I laid the track originally or in moving the layout to this location, but I'll see if I can get a close-up here to show you the technique I used to lay the curves. Here's a section right here. So let's see if we can zoom in on this. There's a joint right here on this outside rail, and the corresponding joint for the inside rail is right here. So I don't know what that is, about 3 inches, I suppose. What I did with the, and this is Atlas Superflex track, is I pulled the movable rail about 3 inches shorter and left the ties exposed here on the right side. I don't know if exposed is the right word. They didn't have any rail in them. And I then took the next section of track and slid the flex rail down inside the ties that were left from removing the other movable rail. So basically what that did is it moves the joints so they're not directly opposed to one another on the track. So I found that made for much better curves. You can see that joint right here. There's no kink in that at all. There's also no kink in this one here. So in testing this, it works really well. It's actually fairly easy to do once you kind of get the hang of it, provided your flex track is flexible and movable enough that you can slide one rail into the ties on the next rail. So that's worked pretty well. I don't have the DCC system connected back to the layout yet. That's going to be my next project. I'm going to have to rewire everything, and by that I mean just reattach the feeder wires. So I had feeder wires in about every 3 feet prior to this, and when I moved the layout I had to clip them to get the layout apart, and then also when I removed the curves to relay the track I had to clip those feeder wires as well up to the rails. So my bus wires are still in place. I don't know if you can see them hanging under the table down there, but they're still in place. And the other thing I've done is relative to DCC anyway, is I've attached a wireless module to my, and I use a Prodigy Advanced Squared DCC system. It's got a controller, it comes with the kit, a wired one. And so I've added the wireless module, which lets me download from MRC an app for my cell phone where I can actually use my cell phone as a throttle. So it works pretty well for me. Again, I don't have any locomotives with sound. Let me see if I can show you here what that looks like. I've got a couple of old iPhone 4s here that I'm using for that. So let's see, it's called Throttle Light, and this is the free version. All it does is direction, speed, and headlight on and off. There is a version that is not free, which allows you to control sound and so forth, other features on your DCC system. This is really hard to see. So anyway, basically what you have on the controller is, let's see if I can get this here. Okay, so where it says not set, what you can do there is you can select a locomotive. I don't know if you can see that either. Reporting number, and then you can store it here in this list, and then you can pick the locomotive that you want to run. You highlight it, select the set button, and then you're controlling that locomotive through your wireless phone. So I've got 3 of them here, one for each grandson, so that was kind of convenient. Plus the one I'm using to film the video. So I'll have 4 wireless throttles and the 1 wired throttle, which is sitting right here right now. I don't even have it connected. I've been using the wireless one to do my testing of the track. So a couple of changes that I believe I've talked about before. Over here in this corner where that wood chip car is, I'm going to put an extension off the right side of the layout here and put a lumber yard back in that area. I've got a lot of material there that came out of my kitchen, which I tore out of the house. Lots of plywood, so I'm going to use that to build an extension over here and put a lumber yard. Swinging around, hopefully I won't make you seasick or dizzy. On this end of the layout, where you see that pile of stuff right now, I'm going to put an extension which will cross the air conditioner, something else I've added to the garage, so I'm nice and cool in here now. And that 4x8 table, I think I've talked about that before, where a fellow neighbor who moved had that for sale. I bought it from him. It's got a 1/2-inch foam core on the top, so ready to have track laid. That's going to be my staging yard back there in the corner. So a 4x8 staging yard should allow for plenty of trains to be stored. And this area here, which was going to be the intermodal yard on the layout originally, I think may still be an intermodal yard. The track that you see in there right now is, hasn't been moved. It was there when the layout was in the other house, still assembled the same way. I've got all of my turnouts sitting out here, just kind of grouped by orientation, left and right. Before the yard came down into this area of the peninsula. So don't know what I'm going to do there yet. Back over here was my original yard. I had the 2 mains, which are here. Then I had originally about 7 yard tracks in here. The first 5 were pull-through yard leads, if you will, so I could pull off the main into the yard and pull back out onto the main without having to back up. I still have the first 4 in there. As you can see, I don't have them connected in here yet. Then right next to that, there's a missing yard track. You can see where the center line was. And then next to that, these 2 tracks here were my engine fueling and sanding facility was in this area. And then outside of that, I had another track that ran around and down here into an engine servicing facility. You know, as far as I know, I'm gonna redo that, I think. This track on the outside here was gonna have a double throw switch on it, so I could switch between you know, the main line and also a programming track. So it would be isolated, of course, from the rest of the layout. So I still intend on doing that. You can see I've still got some cork to put back together here. So wherever there was a joint in the layout, what I've done this time is I've bridged the gap with a 9-inch straight piece of track, and it's not attached here. It's not glued down at all. So if I ever have to do this again, which, you know, I never thought I'd have to do it twice already, and I did. So all I have to do now is take the bolts out of the table, pull the tables apart, and the track will separate here at the 9-inch straight section. So I've got to do that the whole way across the yard. Here at the joint in the table where you see this battery, these things work great as weights, especially when the batteries don't work any longer. But 9-inch section here, bridging this gap. Same with over here, and wherever I have gaps, that's what I've done. So hopefully that will work well. I hope I never have to use them, but you know, never say never. The peninsula down here has been completely redone. If you remember on the old layout, I had tried to do an extension, which didn't work out too well. I actually had a gap that I was going to have to fill, so I took that part. I've redone the peninsula with the masonite underneath the foam board, and so I've got that all relayed now. So it looks a lot better, and it runs really well. So don't want to make this too long. We're already about 12.5 minutes, but wanted to give you an update on where I am. So next steps will be rewiring, getting the DCC back in shape. I do have a couple of power boosters over here. These are 8 amp power stations. You know, I had one which I used before, and I bought another one because I got it off of eBay really cheap. So I'm thinking, you know, with the yard now that I'm going to have down here, I'll probably have a power station that services the outside main and another one that services the inside main. The inside main is where this yard and the intermodal yard will be. They're off the inside main, and then I'll have the outside main plus the lumber facility and my staging yard over here will be on their own separate power stations. So I will isolate both tracks. Well, not isolate both tracks. I'll isolate them from one another, and I'm going to also install circuit breakers just in case. So those are the next steps. Wiring. I have a lot of buildings to assemble. That was one of the things I was doing, was I was acquiring buildings. So you can see there's a ton of them over here. When I couldn't work on the layout because I was doing home remodeling projects. So I bought a lot of buildings. Hopefully I'll have enough spaces to put them. But if not, you know, I might have to build more extensions on the layout. You know, that's always a good thing. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off for today. Appreciate everyone staying with me and watching the videos. And I'll be back soon with hopefully another update. Here's a shot of the old peninsula removed from the layout. The next shot here is the radius end of the peninsula all ready to go. This is the masonite sub roadbed reattached to the benchwork. And a shot of the final reattached peninsula ready to go.